Greetings. I'm Isisara Bey, Artistic Director of the March on Washington Film Festival. I'm here at the Malcolm X and Dr. Betty Shabazz Memorial and Education Center in New York City on the occasion of the Metropolitan Opera's production of X, The Life and Times of Malcolm X.
We are oppressed. We are exploited. We are downtrodden. We are denied not only civil rights, but even human rights. So the only way we're going to get some of this oppression and exploitation away from us or aside from us is come together against the common enemy.
With me is Dr. Ilyasah Shabazz, Chairperson of the Shabazz Center. Thank you for having us. Your father has such a renowned place in history. There are films about him, books about him, you've written about him. But what do you find are some of the misconceptions or misunderstandings about him?
What is really fascinating to me is when people say your father was controversial. And I'm thinking, well, then you're not looking at history, because my father was challenging injustice, oppression. The Malcolm that most people learned about, they discover is not Malcolm in his truth. You know, my father was very disciplined. He served God. You know, he believed in our humanity. He had faith in interpersonal communications and relations and everything. And so it's one of the reasons that I really enjoyed the opera, because it captured his humanity.
Humanity, yes, yes, that's so. So that, you were talking then about some of the essential qualities he has. Can you tell me how your mother, who had so much to do as a professional, a nurse, an educator, mother, and then building this center, how did she keep those qualities alive for all of you? Because he was gone while you were so young.
That's right, you know, and that is something that I often share with the audience, right? Whether they're my students, whether I'm lecturing somewhere, that my mother wasn't even 30 years old.
Wow.
And she had 4 little girls, toddlers. And I'm talking 6 years old, 4 years old, 2 years old, and one who was just born, my youngest, the one under me, Ganila. And she was also pregnant with twins. And on the night of Valentine's Eve, she and her husband lay in bed as husband and wife, their babies in their nursery, sleeping, and a firebomb was thrown into our home. And, you know, my mother, a young woman, still in her 20s. And a week later, she would come to this place, to the Shabazz Center, which then was the Audubon Ballroom, and witness the assassination of her husband, the political assassination of her husband. And I can only imagine that she came into this place really excited and happy to see him. He was staying at the New York Hilton to keep the danger away from his family. But he also found the time to travel to his engagements, because he was, you know, really principled. And if he made a commitment, he was going to be there. And so just the fact that she would witness the assassination of her husband at such a young age and still raise us with a whole lot of love. You know, we were raised in a bubble of love. And you know, I always look back at, you know, those values that she instilled in us and also that emanated. You know, I often ask, how was she able to overcome, you know, this.
That's a lot. At under 30, pregnant, babies.
Right.
Wow.
Right. And I mean, right. Okay.
I never thought of it that way, even reading about it and hearing about it. But to put myself, I remember when my daughter was young. I remember when I was in my 20s, not at all facing all of that. That was tremendous.
That was tremendous. And so she had 4 babies. She was pregnant with twins. And, you know, I often ask, how was she able, you know, to go on and live her life not as a victim, not embittered, but fill our home with a lot of love and a lot of encouragement and so forth. She never accepted no or I can't as an answer for herself.
So how did she keep your father's memory alive? All of you were so young when he was killed. What kept him alive in your family?
Yeah. My mother kept his clothes. I used to wear his shoes around the house. I was had the biggest feet. He was a size 14 shoe. He had, these long Oxford shoes. And his suits, his coat, his briefcase, the books, the papers, a lot of his personal belongings were always there. His hat was in the breakfast nook up at the top around the perimeter was like a bookshelf of books, and up there was his hat. So we always, it's really, it's so interesting now as an adult when I think back, right? That, it had to have been so, such a tragedy for her to have this man who, in so many people's eyes, was invincible.
Yeah.
And to have this husband, that was hers, and who, was just, a giant. And to see him fall. And she talked about that. For the longest time, all she would see at night was him falling. So she kept him alive in our home. She kept conversations, all the time. Dinner, daytime, whenever. There was always these conversations about daddy or my husband. And I find fascinating that my youngest sisters, the twins, never laid eyes on him, but if you heard them talking about daddy, you would never know. So she did a really good job by keeping his memory and the presence around in our household, because she didn't want us to grow up with this feeling that daddy left us, this abrupt loss and lack of presence. So she did a great, she did a good job.
I'm feeling kind of moved as I'm picturing this, because it's not even keeping his quote unquote memory alive. It's like he's a living, breathing part of your family.
Right.
So that all of you can reference him and think about him and being among his things. That's so tremendous.
It really is.
Wow.
Yeah.
So this center, what caused her to want to create this?
Well, I think it was in the late 80s, early 90s, there was going to be a demolition. And the grassroots community protested that they wanted the space preserved for my father. And my mother was a part of that grassroots community. And, ironically, it's the last place that I spent with my mother. She safeguarded the legacy of her husband since the day he was gunned down.
Yeah.
Because the image was so inaccurate, of course. And I think most importantly, she wanted to make sure that his work could be realized by future generations. And I think that it is certainly being realized, because now we understand the importance of identity, the importance of self-love. We understand that every child should have an opportunity to know that they're worthy of love because of the significant contributions, that our ancestors made, to say the least.
Yeah. So now that you work traveling around, particularly in schools, what are you finding children know about Dr. Shabazz and Brother Malcolm, and what they don't know about him that you want them to know?
Understanding our role, as critical thinkers, as smart, forward-thinking adults, our responsibility to make sure that we are instilling specific values. When we look at our education curriculum and we know that there are, parts of history that is omitted, well, I think that it is an opportunity for us to instill, specific values in our young people, that rather continue to talk about subjects that are divisive and self-destructive, you know, that we are providing an accurate recollection of history, right? Africa being the cradle of humanity, of
Yes,
civilization.
yes.
And we are instilling the values of honesty, compassion, forgiveness, you know, and so forth.
You travel also outside of the country or meet people from outside of the country who know of your father. What do you find is the general reception that you have?
So I have traveled to many places outside of the country, and for the most part, it is because of my father. And because it is ethical-based, character-based organizations and people, right, that invite me, and this is what they've gotten from my father. You know, just the inspiration, especially oppressed nations, or nations that are very much spiritually based.
So they look to him for inspiration and role modeling, and you're right, his character is so resounding. It's one of the things that lives on.
Right. So much at the core.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
really
and
beautiful.
evident
Right.
at the core.
Right.
So we have had films and television shows and books, and now this reviving of this opera. Any other art forms you would love to see your father's work, memory, life preserved in?
Well, you know, I think that, gosh, it seems like so many genres have adapted some kind of tribute to Malcolm.
Yeah. So none in particular you'd like to see happen?
Well,
next?
I like
You like them all.
of them. I mean, there's musical, there's
Yes.
paintings,
Yes.
there's drama, there's, you know, it's all there. There's educational, there's academic, you know, there's so many philosophical, religious, you know, there's so many
political,
different-
all
yeah,
of that.
That's right.
So what's your hope for the future of this center and for the work you do?
Well, you know, it was Carter G. Woodson, the founder of
Black History Month, week at the time.
That's right, who said that the biggest race is to see who will control the minds of young people. And so I think it's so important for young people to recognize the power that they have.
Thank you so much. I love being here every time I'm here, and I appreciate your opening it up for us.
We will always open it up for you. We absolutely love you, Isisara.
Thank you. Thank you.